There's a moment in everyone's life when you realize motivation isn't coming. You wait for it, you scroll for it, you hope for that spark that makes everything click again, but it doesn't show up. And that's when most people quit. But not you. Not anymore. Because if you're here, listening to this, it means you've already learned one of life's hardest truths. You'll never feel ready. And if you keep waiting to feel ready, you'll spend your whole life waiting. Discipline doesn't start with inspiration. It starts with resistance. It begins the moment you don't want to do it, but do it anyway, because that's the bridge between the person you are and the person you're trying to become. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation fades. Discipline endures. And that's what this audiobook is about. Building the kind of self-discipline that doesn't depend on how you feel, but on who you've decided to be. You've heard the advice: be consistent, stay focused, trust the process. But no one tells you how hard it is to live that way, to wake up tired and still show up, to feel uninspired and still follow through, to act without reward or applause. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's not loud. It's not exciting. It's a quiet commitment, a choice you make every single day to do the work, to honor your word and to keep moving forward, especially when no one's watching. The truth is, most people don't lack motivation. They lack structure. They rely on feelings to guide them, when feelings were never designed to lead. Your emotions are signals, not instructions. They tell you what's happening, not what you should do. Discipline is the muscle that allows you to act despite those feelings, to move when you don't want to focus when you're distracted, to continue when your mind whispers, "What's the point?" That's real strength. But here's the part no one wants to hear. Discipline doesn't feel good at first. It's uncomfortable. It's repetitive. It's boring, but so is staying the same. So is breaking promises to yourself. So is carrying the quiet guilt of knowing you could do better. Pain is inevitable, but you get to choose your version. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. When you force yourself to be disciplined, you're not punishing yourself. You're freeing yourself. Because every time you show up, every time you follow through, you prove something powerful to your mind, that you can be trusted. That's where confidence is built. Not in results, but in repetition. The moment you say, "I'll do it anyway," you begin to rebuild your self-respect. And that, more than anything, changes your entire life. Here's something most people never realize. Discipline isn't about self-control. It's about self-ownership. It's not a battle between you and your laziness. It's a declaration that your future self deserves better than your excuses. Because excuses will always sound right. They'll always feel justified, but they'll never move you forward. The person you want to become, the one who's focused, clear, consistent, doesn't rely on emotion. They rely on execution. And every time you act without waiting to feel ready, you step closer to that version of yourself. If you want to change your life, you have to start by changing your standards, not when it's convenient, not when it feels good, but now, in this ordinary, uncomfortable, easily dismissed moment. Because the small moments you avoid are the same moments that shape your destiny. When you choose discipline, you're not just doing the task, you're shaping your identity, and identity is stronger than motivation. When you become someone who doesn't negotiate with themselves, you stop relying on willpower. You start operating from character. Discipline is what builds character when no one's around to applaud it. It's the quiet agreement between you and your future that says, "I'll show up for you, no matter what." It's brushing your teeth after midnight because you said you would. It's finishing the workout you hate because your body deserves strength. It's writing one more sentence, reading one more page, holding one more promise. Those little moments compound. They build momentum, and momentum builds freedom. You can't force motivation, but you can force action. And action creates momentum. When you move, your brain follows. When you do, your feelings change. That's the paradox of discipline. It starts as a push but ends as power. Because one day you'll look back and realize you didn't just build habits. You built a foundation that carried you through every storm. So if you're tired of starting over, if you're done depending on fleeting motivation, if you're ready to stop talking about discipline and start living it, then this audiobook is your wake-up call. Not to become perfect, but to become persistent, not to wait for inspiration, but to create it through consistency. Because change doesn't happen when you feel like it. It happens when you do it anyway, and from this moment on, that's your new standard. To show up, especially when you don't feel like it. Because that's how discipline is built. That's how character is forged. That's how you win. One hard choice at a time. Chapter 1. Discipline begins where comfort ends. Every person wants to change, to improve, to grow, to evolve. But the truth most never admit is this. They don't want it badly enough to be uncomfortable. Because comfort is seductive. It feels safe, familiar, easy. It gives you a false sense of control. But growth, real, lasting growth, only begins when you're willing to step beyond that comfort. Discipline doesn't thrive in what's easy. It's born in resistance, forged in discomfort, and sustained by choice. Think about the last time you tried to change something in your life. Maybe you wanted to wake up earlier, start working out, stop procrastinating, eat better, study harder. You began with energy and intention. You made a plan. You set alarms. You told yourself, this time will be different. But then the feeling faded. Your brain whispered, just one day off. Your body craved comfort. And slowly you slipped back into old habits. Not because you didn't care, but because comfort was louder than commitment. That's what separates the disciplined from the distracted. Not talent, not intelligence. Just the willingness to stay uncomfortable long enough to grow. Here's the truth most people avoid. Discipline isn't about doing hard things. It's about doing necessary things, especially when they're uncomfortable. When you feel resistance, that's the signal. That's where the growth hides. That's where the real work begins. Because comfort zones don't expand by thinking about them. They expand by action, by choosing the harder path again and again, until it becomes your new normal. Let's talk about how your brain works. Your mind isn't designed for growth. It's designed for survival. It wants predictability, routine, ease. It wants to conserve energy, not burn it. That's why every time you try to change, it fights back. That voice that says, I'll do it later. It's not the right time. I'll start tomorrow. That's not laziness. That's biology. Your brain is protecting you. From the unknown, from effort, from risk. But here's what discipline teaches you. You can't negotiate with comfort if you want to grow. You have to lead your mind, not follow it. When you push through resistance, you're not just training your body, you're training your identity. Every rep, every page, every choice that goes against comfort rewires your self-image. You stop being the kind of person who quits when it's hard. You become the kind of person who finishes anyway. And that shift, that quiet inner evolution, is what changes everything. Here's a story. A man named Victor decided to start running. He wasn't an athlete. He wasn't even consistent with his workouts, but he wanted to change. The first morning he woke up early, put on his shoes, and stepped outside. The air was cold. His legs felt heavy. His mind screamed, "Go back to bed!" But he ran anyway, barely half a mile. Slow, uncomfortable, painful. The next day, he did it again and again. Every morning, his brain tried to bargain with him. You deserve a rest day. It's too cold. You can skip just once. But he didn't negotiate. He moved. Weeks passed and something changed. Running didn't get easier. He got stronger, and that's what discipline does. It doesn't make the task lighter. It makes you heavier with strength. When you force yourself into discipline, you're building trust with your future self. You're saying, I've got you. I'll do the work now so you can live better later. That's the essence of growth. Delayed gratification. Choosing what's meaningful over what's easy. Comfort says, you've earned a break. Discipline says, you've earned better. Here's something to understand deeply. Your comfort zone is not your friend. It whispers nice things to you, promises you safety, rest, relief, but what it really does is keep you small. The comfort zone is the place where your dreams go to sleep. It's warm there, familiar, predictable, but nothing new ever grows there. Discipline is the decision to leave that warmth, to step out into the unknown, shaking, sweating, doubting, and do it anyway, because comfort never builds confidence. Courage does. You've heard the phrase, get comfortable being uncomfortable. But what it really means is, learn to make peace with effort, to stop resenting the process, to stop craving constant ease. Every great life, every fulfilled person you admire, was built on a foundation of discomfort they learned to embrace. They didn't run from effort. They ran toward it, because they understood that ease doesn't build excellence. Struggle does. Repetition does. Discipline does. Here's a truth to remember. Your future self is shaped by your present discomfort. Every time you do the hard thing today, you make life easier for the person you'll become. Every time you avoid it, you make life harder for that same person. So you have to decide, who are you building for? The version of you who wants relief right now? Or the version who wants freedom later? Because discipline hurts in the moment, but regret lasts a lifetime. When you feel resistance, don't run from it. Lean in. That moment you want to quit, that's your threshold. That's where your old self ends and your new self begins. Every time you push past it, you prove that your limits were lies. Discipline isn't about punishment. It's about expansion. It's you versus yesterday. You versus comfort. You versus that little voice that keeps you small, and the only way to silence it is through action. Here's how to start today. Do one thing that makes you uncomfortable. Intentionally. Wake up earlier. Take a cold shower. Start the project you've been avoiding. Not for the result, but for the practice of doing what's hard. Stop negotiating with your feelings. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't ask yourself if you want to. Just act. Your emotions can catch up later. Reframe discomfort as growth. When something feels difficult, say to yourself, this is what improvement feels like. Because it is. That's the foundation of discipline. Training your mind to see effort as evidence of progress. So, the next time you find yourself in that tug of war between what's comfortable and what's right, remember this: you can't build a stronger life from the same habits that built your weaker one. Comfort is the enemy of progress, and discipline is the weapon that breaks it. Every time you push yourself beyond your comfort zone, you grow a little more. You get a little closer. You become a little stronger. And one day, you'll look back and realize that all the things that once felt impossible are now just part of who you are. That's the beauty of discipline. It doesn't just change what you do. It changes who you become. Chapter 2. The Power of Small Promises. Discipline isn't built in a single grand decision. It's built in the small ones, the ones that seem too insignificant to matter. The little moments where no one's watching, no one's cheering, no one will ever know if you did it or not. That's where your character is shaped, because self-discipline doesn't grow in big victories. It grows in quiet consistency, in the promises you keep to yourself every single day. Most people fail to stay disciplined because they set massive goals but neglect the foundation. They want to wake up at 5 a.m., change their diet, start a business, get fit, meditate, read more, journal, all at once. And when it becomes overwhelming, they give up. Not because they're weak, but because they tried to climb the entire mountain in one step. But discipline doesn't work like that. It's not a leap, it's a rhythm. You build it not by doing everything today, but by doing something every day. Here's the secret. Every small promise you keep to yourself is a deposit into your confidence account. Every time you say you'll do something, and actually do it, you tell your brain, I can trust myself. And when that trust grows, your self-respect grows. And when self-respect grows, discipline becomes your natural state, because discipline isn't about control, it's about trust. Let's take an example. You tell yourself, I'll wake up at 6, your alarm rings, and your mind starts negotiating. 5 more minutes. It's still early. I'll start tomorrow. If you give in, it seems harmless. But you've just told your subconscious, my words don't mean much. Now, imagine you do that every day. With workouts, with habits, with goals, slowly your brain stops believing you. You start doubting yourself, not because you failed, but because you've broken too many small promises. That's how people lose confidence. Not through one big mistake, but through hundreds of tiny, quiet ones. But here's the good news. You can rebuild that trust, one small promise at a time. Start ridiculously small. Wake up 10 minutes earlier. Drink 1 more glass of water. Read 2 pages instead of 20. You don't need to win the day. You just need to win the moment, because consistency compounds. Tiny actions done daily turn into habits that rewrite your identity. Let's talk about why this works. Your brain learns through association. If you consistently follow through, it associates effort with reward. That's how discipline becomes instinctive. But if you often break promises, your mind learns that your words don't matter, so it stops taking them seriously. That's why rebuilding discipline starts small, so your brain can witness your consistency and rebuild trust from the ground up. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. Here's a story. A woman named Leah had tried every productivity system. She'd make elaborate plans, set huge goals, and give up within days. She felt lazy, unfocused, undisciplined. Then one day, a mentor told her, "Stop trying to change your life. Just keep one small promise to yourself today." So she did. She decided to walk for 10 minutes every morning. That's it. No pressure, no goals, just a promise. At first it felt meaningless, but after a few weeks, something shifted. She started trusting herself again. That 10-minute walk turned into 20, then 30, then a morning routine that changed her entire mindset. Because it wasn't the walk that mattered. It was the self-trust that grew from it. You don't build confidence by achieving big things. You build it by keeping your word when it's hard. That's what small promises teach you. That you can depend on yourself, and once you believe that, discipline becomes natural. Because you'll always act in alignment with the person you believe yourself to be. If you see yourself as unreliable, you'll continue breaking promises. But if you see yourself as dependable, you'll protect your word like it's sacred. That's how you reprogram your identity. Here's something to think about. Most people lie to themselves more than anyone else. They say, "I'll start tomorrow. I'll stop doing this. I'll change soon." But tomorrow never comes, and over time, those lies become your truth. You start believing that maybe you're just not disciplined, that maybe you're not cut out for consistency, but you are. You're just out of alignment with your word. So today, make it simple. Keep one promise, then keep another. That's it. One day at a time, you'll rebuild the confidence you thought you'd lost. Discipline doesn't demand perfection. It demands honesty. If you miss a day, don't lie to yourself. Acknowledge it, adjust, and recommit. Because every time you take responsibility, you strengthen the bridge between who you are and who you're becoming. Self-honesty is the root of self-discipline. Here's a truth that will change your life. Big goals require small habits, and small habits require small promises. You can't build a disciplined life overnight, but you can start living like someone who keeps promises today, and the more promises you keep, the more momentum you gain. That's how change becomes permanent. Not through sudden transformation, but through daily alignment. Let's make this practical. Try this for the next 7 days. Pick one small promise, something you can do daily without excuses. Example, read 1 page, do 5 push-ups, write for 5 minutes. Do it at the same time each day. Routine reinforces identity. Track it visibly. Use a notebook, calendar, or app. Check it off. That visual cue is powerful. No exceptions, no negotiations. Even if it's small, never skip. Because skipping one time is how doubt sneaks back in. After 7 days, notice how you feel. Not about the results, about your relationship with yourself. You'll feel stronger, clearer, calmer. That's the effect of trust. Here's another truth. When you keep small promises, big ones become easier. If you can trust yourself to wake up early, you can trust yourself to stay consistent. If you can trust yourself to finish what you start, you can trust yourself to handle bigger goals. Discipline is cumulative. It grows with every kept promise. That's why people who master small habits eventually master everything else. They're not chasing success. They're building systems that make success inevitable. Here's something to remember when it gets hard. You're not failing because it's hard. It's hard because you're rebuilding integrity. You're fighting years of broken promises, years of emotional negotiation, years of shortcuts and excuses. But every day you show up, you repair that foundation, and eventually it becomes unshakable. So, when you feel like giving up, when that voice in your head says, "It's too small to matter," remember this. Small doesn't mean insignificant. Small means sustainable. Every big transformation you'll ever experience starts with one small promise you refuse to break. Keep it today. Keep it tomorrow. Keep it when it's hard, because that's how self-trust becomes self-discipline, and self-discipline becomes your freedom. Chapter 3. Stop negotiating with your feelings. Every time you negotiate with your feelings, you lose power. Not because feelings are bad, but because they're temporary. They shift with the weather, change with your mood, and disappear the moment you act. But most people live their entire lives letting their feelings make the final call. They say they'll work out if they feel like it. They'll wake up early if they feel rested. They'll take the next step if it feels right, and that's why they stay stuck. Because discipline is not about how you feel. It's about what you do, no matter how you feel. Here's the truth. Your emotions were never designed to lead your life. They were designed to guide it. But most people make emotions the driver instead of the dashboard. They let fear decide their future. They let doubt determine their decisions. They let comfort cancel their commitments, and then they wonder why they never move forward. Discipline begins the moment you stop negotiating with emotion and start acting from intention. Let's be honest. You're not always going to feel motivated. You're not always going to feel ready, inspired, or confident. But here's the thing. You don't need to feel like it to do it. Your brain doesn't know the difference between motivation and motion. Once you start moving, your emotions will follow your actions. You've experienced it before. You didn't want to go to the gym. But once you started moving, your energy came back. You didn't feel like cleaning. But once you began, the momentum made it easier. That's the magic of action. It reprograms emotion. Here's a truth most people overlook. Feelings are often the loudest at the beginning, right before you take action. That's your brain trying to protect you. It's not sabotage. It's safety. It doesn't want you to risk failure, pain, or embarrassment, so it whispers, "You're tired. You can do it later. One day off won't matter." And that's the negotiation, the moment between your old self and your future self. Every time you choose action over comfort, you teach your brain who's in charge. You stop being a slave to emotion and start becoming the master of it. Here's something powerful to remember. Your emotions don't always tell the truth, but your actions always do. Your feelings might say, "You can't do this," but your actions can say, "Watch me." Your feelings might say, "You're too tired," but your actions can prove, "I still showed up." Discipline is the bridge between what you feel and what you've promised yourself. Every time you cross it, you grow stronger, clearer, more consistent. Let's talk about the trap most people fall into, the trap of waiting for the perfect emotional state to begin. They wait for motivation, for clarity, for the right mood, but waiting for the right feeling is just another form of procrastination. The best time to act is rarely when you feel ready. It's when you feel resistance, because resistance is the sign that something matters. It's proof that you're stepping into growth. The discomfort you feel isn't a warning to stop. It's a signal to start. Here's a story. A man named Elias wanted to write a book. Every night, he told himself, "I'll start when I feel inspired." But weeks passed, then months. No inspiration came. Then one evening he sat down anyway, tired, distracted, uninspired, and wrote for 15 minutes. The words were bad, but he kept writing. The next night, he did the same. And slowly, something shifted. The more he wrote, the more inspired he felt. By the end of the year, he had finished the book. He learned something powerful. Action doesn't follow emotion. Emotion follows action. That's how disciplined people win. They don't wait for the right mood. They create it. When you stop negotiating with your feelings, you stop being reactive. You start being intentional. Because the truth is, you're not supposed to feel motivated every day. You're supposed to act anyway. You don't brush your teeth because you feel inspired. You do it because it's necessary. Discipline works the same way. You do it because it matters, not because it's convenient. Here's something to sit with. Feelings are guests. They come and go. But discipline is your foundation. It stays. When your emotions fluctuate, discipline gives you stability. When you're sad, tired, anxious, you can still act. You can still move. You can still grow. And ironically, the act of moving is what heals the emotion you thought you couldn't handle. Here's what happens when you stop negotiating. You remove confusion. You stop asking questions like, do I feel like it? Should I start? What if I'm not ready? Instead, there's only one question left. What needs to be done? That's clarity. That's freedom. That's power. Discipline turns chaos into structure and hesitation into direction. When your emotions no longer control your decisions, you finally start moving consistently, and consistency is what creates progress every single time. Here's another story. A woman named Nina struggled with anxiety. Every morning, her mind flooded with reasons not to face the day. She used to let those feelings decide for her. Cancel plans, skip workouts, delay everything. But one day, she made a rule. I don't need to feel like it. I just need to start. So she did. Even on bad days, she took one small action and made her bed, stretched, wrote one line in her journal. And that was enough to shift her state, because she learned that emotion is like weather. You can't control when the clouds come, but you can decide to carry an umbrella and keep walking. Here's the formula. Action first. Feeling second. Every time you reverse that order, you stay stuck. But when you move first, the feeling catches up. You start feeling proud. You start feeling capable. You start feeling like the person you've been trying to become. That's the loop of discipline. It feeds itself. The more you act, the better you feel. The better you feel, the more you act. And eventually, emotion stops being the driver and becomes the passenger. You can't wait for the perfect mindset to take action. You build the mindset by taking action. You can't think your way into discipline. You have to act your way into it. Every decision that goes against your feelings strengthens your foundation. Every action that defies comfort builds emotional resilience. That's how you rewire yourself, not by eliminating feelings, but by outgrowing their control. Here's your practice for this week. Stop asking how you feel. Ask what matters. When you hesitate, shift the question from "Do I feel like it?" to "What does the disciplined version of me do right now?" Take the smallest possible action immediately. Don't think, just move. Stand up, write one sentence, take one step. Action cuts through hesitation like a knife through fog. Celebrate doing it anyway. Each time you act without feeling like it, you're rewiring your brain for strength. That's progress worth noticing. One day, you'll realize something powerful. Your feelings aren't the enemy. They're just information. They can sit beside you, but they don't get to hold the steering wheel anymore. You'll still feel tired, unmotivated, distracted, but now those feelings won't stop you. They'll simply exist in the background while you move forward anyway. That's what real freedom feels like. Not emotional control, but emotional awareness combined with consistent action. Discipline isn't the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. It's doing what needs to be done, even when every part of you wants to avoid it. It's quiet, steady, and powerful. It doesn't argue. It acts. Because you've learned something most people never do, that your feelings aren't commands. They're signals. And you get to decide what to do with them. So, the next time your mind starts to bargain with you, when it says, "You can rest now. You don't have to do it today. It doesn't matter this once," smile, take a breath, and act anyway. Because every time you act without negotiating, you take back control. You build resilience. You reinforce your identity as someone who keeps going, no matter what. That's not just discipline. That's power. Chapter 4. The Pain of Regret versus the Pain of Growth. Every path you choose in life comes with pain. That's the truth most people avoid. There's the pain of discipline, the early mornings, the effort, the repetition, the days when no one notices and you still show up. And then there's the pain of regret, the heaviness of missed chances, the sting of wasted time, the quiet sadness that follows you when you realize you could have done more. Both hurt, but one hurts now, and the other hurts forever. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid pain altogether. They chase comfort, ease, shortcuts, and convenience. They tell themselves, "I'll start later. It's not that serious. I deserve a break." But what they don't see is that every moment of comfort is a debt that comes due in regret. Avoiding effort now only multiplies pain later, because the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret lingers for years. You can't escape discomfort, You can only choose which kind you want to live with. Do you want the ache of pushing yourself forward or the ache of wishing you had? Do you want the burn of effort or the emptiness of potential never used? That's the choice every person makes, consciously or not, every single day. Discipline is pain with purpose. It's the discomfort that builds something. It's the suffering that strengthens you. Regret is pain without meaning. It's the echo of all the things you didn't do. It's the weight of knowing the door was open and you never walked through it. One pain shapes you. The other haunts you, let's be honest. Discipline is never easy. It's not supposed to be. It demands sacrifice. It asks you to trade comfort for consistency, pleasure for progress, and excuses for execution. But while discipline hurts, it never damages. It's a constructive pain. The soreness that follows a good workout. The fatigue that comes after a day of honest work. The ache that says, "I'm getting stronger." That pain fades. And what's left behind is pride. Regret feels different. It's not sharp. It's dull. It creeps in slowly, quietly, like a whisper that becomes impossible to ignore. It shows up in questions like, what if I had tried? What if I hadn't quit? What if I had been braver? Regret doesn't fade. It grows, because time magnifies what could have been, and the longer you avoid discipline, the heavier regret becomes. Here's something most people never realize. You're not choosing between pain and peace. You're choosing between two kinds of pain. The pain of doing the work now, or the pain of wishing you had later. One is a tax you pay to grow. The other is interest on the debt of procrastination. The pain of discipline rewards you with strength. The pain of regret punishes you with doubt. And you get to decide which one you live with. Here's a story. A man named Marco always wanted to learn the guitar. He bought one when he was 20. He practiced for a week, got frustrated, and stopped. "I'll start again soon," he told himself. He repeated that sentence for years, until one day at 45, he picked it up again. But his hands were stiff, his mind filled with regret. As he strummed the strings, he whispered, "If I had just stuck with it, I'd be a master by now." That's regret. It's not the guitar he mourned. It was the time he wasted. Here's another story. A woman named Claire wanted to get fit. She hated working out, the sweat, the soreness, the routine. She avoided it for years, always saying she'd start when she felt ready. One day her doctor told her she had high blood pressure. She cried, not because of the diagnosis, but because she knew this pain could have been avoided. She had chosen comfort, and comfort had chosen consequences. That's how regret works. It always costs more than discipline ever would. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't that one group avoids pain. It's that they choose the right one. They choose the discomfort of effort over the suffering of inaction. They know that success demands payment up front, but regret charges interest forever. Here's something powerful to remember. When you choose discipline, you're not just avoiding regret, you're building freedom. Because discipline is the price of freedom. Without it, you become a prisoner of your impulses. Every time you choose comfort, you give your freedom away. To laziness, to distraction, to fear. But every time you choose discipline, you reclaim it. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. Freedom is the ability to do what's necessary, even when you don't want to. Discipline hurts because it's growth in motion. Growth always requires friction. You can't evolve while staying still. You can't become more while avoiding effort. So when discipline hurts, remind yourself, this is the pain of progress, not the pain of punishment. It's proof that you're changing. There's a beautiful thing that happens when you stay disciplined long enough. The pain shifts. What used to feel unbearable starts feeling meaningful. What used to drain you starts to energize you, because pain loses its power when it's connected to purpose. You stop seeing effort as suffering. You start seeing it as self-respect. That's what happens when you stop running from discomfort. It becomes your teacher instead of your enemy. Here's your reflection for today. If you keep avoiding the pain of growth, you're guaranteeing the pain of regret. You can't stay still. You're either moving forward or falling behind. Every time you take the easy way out, you're saying no to your future self. You're choosing temporary relief over permanent pride. But when you choose the harder path, you're making a different statement. I'm willing to pay the price now, so I can live in freedom later. That's what separates those who talk about change from those who live it. Here's something to ask yourself tonight. What hurts more, doing the work or wishing you had? Think of every area of your life, your health, your dreams, your relationships. Which parts of your story are driven by regret? Which ones are fueled by discipline? Because both write your story, but only one gives it meaning. Here's a truth most people learn too late. You'll never regret the effort you gave, but you'll always regret the chances you didn't take. You'll never regret the mornings you showed up tired. You'll never regret the nights you pushed through. You'll never regret the moments you gave your best when no one else cared, because those moments build you. They make you stronger, quieter, and more capable. But you will regret staying the same. You'll regret waiting. You'll regret listening to the voice that told you to take it easy. The future always remembers what comfort made you forget. So, when you're faced with a choice, when your body is tired, your mind is resisting, and comfort is calling, ask yourself this: what will hurt more tomorrow? Doing this now or wishing I had? That question will always show you the truth, because regret is heavier than effort. Always. The pain of growth builds you. The pain of regret breaks you, and the difference between the two is the decision you make in the present moment. You can't eliminate pain, but you can assign it purpose. So the next time you feel the discomfort of discipline, remind yourself, this is not punishment. This is progress. You're trading short-term pain for long-term peace, and that trade will always be worth it. Chapter 5. Repetition is reinforcement. You've probably heard the saying, repetition is the mother of all skill. But in truth, repetition is the language of transformation. Every time you repeat an action, you send a message to your mind. This is who I am now. That's how habits form. That's how identity reshapes itself. That's how discipline stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Most people fail because they think discipline is a moment, a burst of energy, a streak of motivation, a few good days of consistency. But real discipline isn't built in moments. It's built in monotony, in the boring, predictable, repetitive actions you do over and over again until they become effortless. That's not punishment. That's programming. You're training your mind to believe what your actions repeat. The truth is, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you're becoming. When you show up even when you don't want to, you cast a vote for discipline. When you skip it because you don't feel like it, you cast a vote for inconsistency. Neither choice defines you immediately, but over time your dominant votes build your identity. That's why repetition matters. It's not about perfection, it's about direction. Think about it this way: if you go to the gym once, nothing changes. If you go for a week, you might feel progress, but not transformation. But if you go every day for a year, your entire identity shifts. You no longer think, I need to go to the gym. You think, I'm the kind of person who doesn't miss workouts. That's the power of repetition. It changes your self-image through proof. Your brain learns through patterns. Every repeated behavior strengthens a neural connection. If you keep repeating laziness, your brain makes it automatic. If you keep repeating discipline, your brain makes that automatic. Repetition is how you turn effort into instinct. That's why consistency is so much more powerful than intensity. Anyone can be motivated for a day. Few can be consistent for months, but only the consistent become unstoppable. Here's something to remember. Repetition isn't supposed to feel exciting. It's supposed to feel normal. The repetition you get bored of is the repetition that's building your foundation. That's why the best performers in every field, athletes, musicians, entrepreneurs, all practice the same fundamentals every single day. They don't outsmart the process. They outlast it. They understand that repetition doesn't just build skill, it builds identity, discipline, and resilience. Here's a story. A young pianist named Aria dreamed of performing on stage. Every morning she practiced scales for 2 hours. Her friends laughed. Why waste time on the basics? They said, but she understood something they didn't. The basics are never basic. They're the foundation everything else stands on. Years later, when she performed flawlessly on stage, people said, "She's talented." But it wasn't talent. It was repetition. What looked like mastery was simply consistency made visible. That's how discipline works. It's not about doing something once. It's about doing it until it becomes part of you. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your habits. And habits are born in repetition. That's why you can't rely on motivation. Motivation gets you started. Repetition keeps you going. Here's something powerful to understand. Repetition creates reinforcement, and reinforcement shapes belief. When you repeatedly act a certain way, your brain begins to believe it's who you are. If you write every day, your mind stops saying, "I want to be a writer." It starts saying, "I am a writer." If you train every day, you stop saying, "I want to be fit." You start saying, "I'm disciplined." That's how identity is built, not through goals, but through evidence. Here's another truth. Your habits are stronger than your intentions. You can want to change. You can visualize success. You can set goals. But if your daily habits don't reflect that vision, you'll always stay stuck. Discipline means aligning what you say you want with what you actually do every day, because the mind doesn't believe words. It believes repetition. Most people give up before repetition turns into reinforcement. They quit too soon, thinking it's not working. But that's like planting a seed and digging it up every week to see if it's growing. The roots form first. The growth is invisible until it's not. Discipline works the same way. You might not see progress immediately, but every act of consistency is building a foundation beneath the surface. And one day, everything you've been doing suddenly pays off all at once. Here's the hard part. Repetition feels boring. You'll get tired of doing the same thing. You'll crave something new. That's your ego wanting excitement. But discipline isn't about excitement. It's about execution. Because when you master the boring, you become unstoppable. Anyone can perform when it's thrilling. Few can persist when it's routine. But that's exactly where greatness hides. In the repetition that no one celebrates. Here's how you make repetition work for you. Choose one behavior worth repeating. Don't chase 5 habits. Choose one that matters most to your long-term growth. Example, write every morning, exercise, meditate, study. Attach it to something you already do. Habits stick better when connected to existing routines. Example, meditate after brushing your teeth or right after coffee. Track it visually. Mark every day you follow through. Watching your streak grow is reinforcement in itself. Don't break the chain. Even one small action, a single push-up, one paragraph, keeps the rhythm alive. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is momentum. Here's a truth that will shift your mindset. You don't rise when you feel inspired. You rise when your habits pull you upward automatically. That's what repetition does. It replaces emotional motivation with muscle memory. When your habits are strong, you don't need to think. You just move. You just do. That's what it means to be disciplined, to make the right choice the automatic one. Repetition also reinforces resilience. Because every time you repeat an action despite boredom, you strengthen your ability to stay focused without reward. That's what makes you different. Most people give up when the excitement fades. You keep going because repetition has become your rhythm. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's quiet, consistent, and repetitive, but that's why it works. It doesn't need inspiration. It builds its own momentum. Here's something to remember. You're not repeating the action. You're repeating the identity. Every time you show up, you're reinforcing who you are. When you keep that in mind, repetition stops feeling like drudgery. It becomes an act of self-definition. You're not just doing a workout, you're becoming disciplined. You're not just writing a page, you're becoming consistent. You're not just meditating, you're becoming centered. That shift changes everything. So the next time you find yourself bored, tired, or uninspired, remember, this repetition is the foundation. You're not stuck. You're strengthening your core. Every repetition is a brick. Every day is a layer. And soon you'll stand on a foundation that can't be shaken. Because repetition doesn't just build results. It builds resilience, identity, and trust. Discipline isn't built by doing something once. It's built by doing it until it becomes who you are. That's why repetition matters. Because what you do daily eventually becomes destiny. Keep repeating. Keep reinforcing. Keep becoming. Because discipline isn't born in intensity. It's born in repetition. And the more you repeat your commitments, the more life starts to mirror your consistency. Chapter 6. Momentum, the secret ingredient. If discipline is the engine, momentum is the fuel. Without it, you stall. With it, you glide. Momentum is what turns effort into rhythm. It's what transforms discipline from something you force into something that starts to feel natural. It's not magic. It's movement, consistent, intentional, forward motion. And once it starts, it carries you further than motivation ever could. Here's something most people never understand. You don't need massive effort to build momentum. You just need movement. It's the small start that matters. The first rep, the first paragraph, the first uncomfortable step when everything inside you wants to stay still. Because once you're in motion, everything gets easier. Inertia isn't just a law of physics, it's a law of life. Objects in motion stay in motion. People in motion stay progressing. That's why starting is everything. The hardest part of any task is the beginning, that moment between thinking and doing where resistance feels heaviest. Your brain says, "It's too much." It won't matter. You can do it later, but if you just take one small action, even something tiny, you break the mental barrier. You go from 0 to 1, and 1 is infinitely more powerful than 0. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. But in truth, motivation doesn't come first. Action creates motivation, and motivation creates momentum. It's a loop, and the only way to start it is to act before you feel like it. When you understand that, you'll never wait again. Here's the secret no one tells you. Momentum is fragile at the start. It's like pushing a heavy car that's stalled. At first it doesn't move. You push and it resists. You push harder and it still doesn't budge. But if you keep pushing, something shifts. The resistance gives way. And suddenly it starts rolling. Once it moves, it takes less energy to keep it moving than it took to start it. That's momentum. And that's why the beginning feels hard. Not because you're weak, but because you're building force. Discipline creates momentum, and momentum makes discipline easier. It's a cycle. The more you show up, the more natural showing up becomes. The first time you wake up early, it's torture. The 10th time, it's a habit. The 100th time, it's identity. Momentum turns struggle into strength. Here's a story. A man named Raphael wanted to start his own business. For years, he told himself he wasn't ready. He needed more time, more research, more confidence. But one day, he made a simple decision. He'd spend 30 minutes a day building something. A logo, a plan, an email, anything. At first, it felt pointless. But after a few weeks, something changed. The project started taking shape. Ideas began to connect. Momentum was forming. And 6 months later, what started as 30 minutes a day had turned into a full business. He didn't wait for momentum. He created it. That's the truth about momentum. It doesn't find you. You build it through motion, through doing the next right thing, through not letting yesterday's fatigue dictate today's effort. It's not about pace. It's about direction. As long as you're moving forward, you're winning. Here's something to understand deeply. Momentum doesn't care how fast you're going, only that you keep going. You don't have to sprint. You just can't stop. Because when you stop completely, you have to rebuild from 0 again. And starting from 0 is always the hardest part. So when things get difficult, don't quit. Slow down if you must, but never stop moving. That's how momentum compounds. Think of momentum as a silent force multiplier. When you're consistent, every small action builds on the last. You start stacking wins. Your brain starts associating effort with progress. Your confidence grows, and suddenly, what used to take willpower now feels automatic. That's how momentum transforms effort into ease. It's not that life gets easier. It's that you've built enough rhythm to carry yourself through. Here's a truth worth memorizing. Momentum rewards consistency, not intensity. You don't need to do everything today. You just need to keep moving every day. Intensity burns out. Consistency compounds. Discipline plus momentum equals endurance. And endurance is what separates those who finish from those who quit halfway. Here's another story. A writer named Caleb struggled with perfectionism. He'd start projects, obsess over details, and never finish. Then one day, he made a rule. I'll write 1 paragraph a day, no matter what. That was it. No expectations, no pressure. Some days he wrote just a few sentences. Other days pages poured out. But the point wasn't volume, it was momentum. A year later, he had finished his first book. When asked how he did it, he said, "I stopped trying to be perfect. I just refused to stop moving. That's momentum, imperfect progress done consistently. Momentum thrives on simplicity. The more you complicate your routine, the easier it is to lose rhythm. Keep it small, keep it sustainable, keep it repeatable." Discipline isn't about doing more. It's about doing again, the same steps, the same habits, the same focus, until progress becomes predictable. Here's your practice for building unstoppable momentum. Start small, start now. Don't wait for a perfect plan. The smallest action today is worth more than the perfect plan tomorrow. Protect the chain. Track your progress visually. A simple mark on a calendar. Each day you follow through, add a mark. Don't break the chain. Never stop completely. Slow days are fine. Rest days are fine. But never let the motion die. Do one small thing, anything, to stay connected. Focus on direction, not distance. You don't have to move far every day. You just have to move forward. Momentum also requires recovery. That's something people forget. You can't sprint forever. You need moments of rest to sustain your pace. But rest is different from quitting. Rest is strategic. It's deliberate recovery that protects the rhythm you've built. Quitting is surrender. It disconnects you from your identity. The difference is intention. So rest when you need to, but always return to motion. Momentum isn't built by emotion. It's built by rhythm. Like the tide, like a heartbeat, like breath. In, out, effort, rest. Push, recover. That's the cycle that keeps you alive, and it's the same cycle that keeps your discipline alive. You don't have to move fast. You just have to stay in rhythm. Here's the truth. Once momentum takes over, discipline stops feeling like force. You stop pushing against resistance and start flowing with it. Your body adapts. Your mind sharpens. Your habits pull you instead of you pulling them. That's when you know you've crossed the threshold. When consistency no longer drains you, it defines you. Momentum is the quiet power behind every great life. It's what keeps you going when excitement fades. It's what turns someday into today. It's what separates those who dream from those who do. You don't need to move fast. You just need to move forward, again and again, until forward becomes your nature. That's momentum. That's discipline in motion. And once you have it, you'll never want to stop. Chapter 7. Mental Toughness and Self-Respect. There's a kind of strength that doesn't come from muscles, but from the quiet endurance of the mind. It's not loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need to prove itself. It's the kind of strength that shows up when everything inside you wants to give up. But you keep going. Anyway, that's mental toughness. And it's not something you're born with. It's something you build, one hard decision at a time. Mental toughness isn't about ignoring pain or pretending to be invincible. It's about choosing courage over comfort. It's about staying grounded when your emotions pull you in every direction. It's not about suppressing your feelings. It's about mastering them. Because if your emotions control you, you'll always be a slave to circumstance. But when you learn to control yourself, you become unstoppable. Here's something most people get wrong. They think discipline is about rules, but it's really about respect. You don't follow through because you have to. You follow through because you respect yourself enough to do what you said you would. That's the real source of mental toughness. The alignment between your words and your actions. When you tell yourself, "I'll do this," and then you do it, you prove that you can be trusted. That's self-respect in motion. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your self-image. And every time you break one, you weaken it. That's why some people struggle to stay disciplined. Not because they're lazy, but because they've broken so many promises to themselves that they no longer believe their own words. You can't build confidence on broken trust. So if you want to rebuild discipline, start by rebuilding respect. Self-respect means treating your commitments like they matter. It means not letting temporary emotions destroy permanent goals. It means saying, I'll finish this because I said I would, even when no one else cares. Mental toughness grows in those quiet, lonely moments where it would be easy to quit, but you don't, because deep down, you know the pain of quitting lasts longer than the pain of finishing. Here's something to understand about mental toughness. It's not about feeling strong. It's about acting strong when you don't feel like it. The strongest people still feel doubt. They still feel fear. They still question themselves, but they move anyway. They do what's necessary, not what's convenient. They've learned that progress doesn't require confidence. It requires commitment. Confidence comes later, after the doing. Mental toughness also means managing your thoughts like a leader. When your mind starts spiraling into excuses, you stop it. When it says you're tired, you say, maybe, but we still have work to do. When it says you're not good enough, you say, I'll get better. That's leadership, the leadership of self. And if you can't lead yourself, you'll never master discipline. There's a saying, if you can't control yourself, someone else will. And that's the truth. If you can't control your time, your distractions will. If you can't control your emotions, your fears will. If you can't control your habits, your environment will. Mental toughness is freedom, because it's the power to command your own life. It's the ability to say, I decide how I show up today, no matter how I feel, no matter what happened yesterday. Here's something people rarely admit. Mental toughness is lonely, because most people won't understand it. They'll tell you to relax. They'll tell you you're doing too much. They'll say, it's okay to take it easy. And sometimes they're right. But often, they're not, because they're speaking from comfort, not conviction. They don't know what it means to demand more of yourself because you know you're capable of more. They don't understand that comfort is the slowest form of self-destruction, and if you listen to them long enough, you'll start betraying your own standards just to fit in. That's why self-respect also means being okay with being misunderstood. You have to be willing to be different, to chase something others don't see, to work when others sleep, to care about things they call obsessive. Mental toughness means doing what's right for your future self, even if your present self hates it. It's not glamorous. It's not pretty. It's often exhausting. But when you lay your head down at night, you'll feel peace, the kind that only comes from knowing you didn't give up on yourself. Here's the truth. Your mind is like a muscle. The more you challenge it, the stronger it gets. When you force yourself to do what's difficult, when you push through resistance, you're training your mind to obey your goals, not your emotions. That's mental fitness. Every time you face discomfort and stay the course, you're building endurance for the next challenge. You don't get mentally tougher by avoiding pressure. You get tougher by walking through it. Let's be honest, you won't always win. There will be days when you slip, when you lose focus, when you fall short. And that's okay, because toughness isn't about never failing. It's about never surrendering. It's about saying, I may have lost today, but I'll be back tomorrow. That's resilience. That's self-respect in action. Here's a way to build mental toughness starting today. Stop negotiating with your emotions. The mind loves comfort. Train it to love commitment more. When you say, I'll do this, don't ask how you feel. Just do it. Keep promises no matter how small. You don't need big goals to build strength. You need consistency. The small things create the mindset for big ones. Choose response over reaction. When something triggers you, pause. Take one breath before you act. That moment of control is where discipline lives. Forgive yourself, but don't excuse yourself. Self-respect isn't self-punishment. Learn from mistakes, but don't use them as reasons to lower your standards. Do something hard on purpose. Cold showers. Early mornings. Silence. Seek discomfort regularly. It keeps your mind sharp, your will trained. Here's something powerful. The mind respects what it endures. Every time you face resistance and push through, you gain a new level of self-respect. You start seeing yourself differently. You start trusting yourself more. You start believing in your own strength. And when that belief grows, discipline becomes natural, because you no longer need external motivation. You're powered by self-respect. Mental toughness isn't about dominance. It's about integrity. It's about doing the right thing even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or unseen. You don't need applause. You don't need approval. You just need alignment. between what you believe and how you behave. That's where inner peace lives. The world will test you. Life will knock you down. People will misunderstand you. But if you've built mental toughness, you'll bend, not break, because you'll know who you are. And when you know who you are, no circumstance can take that away. You'll stop needing the world to validate you. You'll stop living for comfort. You'll start living with clarity. That's the kind of strength no one can teach. Only experience can. Here's what I want you to remember. Self-respect builds discipline. Discipline builds mental toughness. Mental toughness builds freedom. That's the path. That's the process. And it starts every time you make a promise. And keep it. So, when the next hard moment comes, when it feels like quitting is easier, remind yourself, I've earned my respect through effort. I won't lose it to emotion. That's how you win the invisible battles. That's how you stay disciplined when others fold. That's how you become unbreakable. Chapter 8. The Power of Emotional Detachment. At some point in your journey, you have to learn to stop being ruled by how you feel, because emotions are powerful. But they're not always truthful. They react to the moment, not the mission. They chase comfort, not commitment. And if you let your emotions sit in the driver's seat, you'll never make it to where you're going. That's why emotional detachment is one of the most underrated forms of strength. It doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming clear. Emotional detachment is not about not feeling. It's about not being controlled by what you feel. It's about learning to pause before you act, to breathe before you speak, to think before you quit. It's the space between impulse and intention. And in that space, discipline is born. Every emotion wants attention. Anger demands a reaction. Fear begs for safety. Doubt whispers, "Don't bother." But detachment allows you to look at those emotions like clouds passing in the sky. Temporary, changing, never permanent. You can acknowledge them without obeying them. That's freedom. Most people think they're making rational decisions, but what they're really doing is emotional problem solving. They trade discipline for comfort, long-term peace for short-term relief. They let how they feel in a moment determine who they become over a lifetime. But the disciplined mind learns to separate emotion from execution. It says, I feel tired, but I'll still show up. I feel scared, but I'll still try. I feel lost, but I'll still move forward. That's emotional detachment, staying loyal to your values even when your emotions rebel. Here's something powerful to understand. Emotions are like waves. They rise, they crash, they pass. But if you chase every wave, you'll drown. Detachment is the surfboard that keeps you afloat. You don't fight the waves. You ride them. You observe your emotions without letting them define you. That's the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is emotion in control. Response is emotion under control. Here's a truth that will save you years of frustration. You can feel something and do the opposite. You can feel fear and still take the leap. You can feel lazy and still show up. You can feel doubt and still trust the process. Detachment doesn't erase emotion. It redefines your relationship with it. Instead of asking, how do I feel? You start asking, what needs to be done? That's the difference between amateurs and professionals, between dreamers and doers. Emotional detachment doesn't make you less human. It makes you more intentional, because emotions are signals, not sentences. They're meant to be noticed, not obeyed. Fear might say, be careful. But you don't have to turn that into don't try. Anger might say, this hurts. But that doesn't mean get revenge. Sadness might say, slow down. But it doesn't have to mean stop living. When you detach, you start using emotions as information, not as instruction. Here's something that might surprise you. Emotional detachment is built through repetition, just like every other form of discipline. You practice it every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you breathe instead of exploding, every time you respond with logic instead of impulse. You're training your brain to think before it obeys emotion. That's mental conditioning, and over time, your default response becomes calm instead of chaos. Let's talk about trading, not in the financial sense, but in the emotional sense. Because life is a series of emotional trades. You trade temporary comfort for long-term pride. You trade instant gratification for future strength. You trade reaction for reflection. And the truth is, the better you manage those trades, the better your life becomes. Discipline thrives in emotional neutrality. You can't stay consistent if your mood dictates your moves, so you must learn to stay steady when everything around you feels unstable. That's emotional mastery. Here's a story. There was once a runner who trained for a marathon. Every morning he woke up before dawn to run, no matter how tired or uninspired he felt. One morning, it was pouring rain. He stood by his window, staring at the storm, and thought, "Maybe I'll rest today." But then he realized something. If he only trained when it was easy, he'd never be ready for the race. So he put on his shoes and ran in the rain. When asked later how he stayed motivated, he said, "I don't run because I feel like it. I run because I said I would." That's emotional detachment. You honor your commitment, not your condition. Here's another truth. Detachment is not suppression. Suppression is pretending you don't care. Detachment is caring deeply, but staying steady. It's loving your goals without being desperate for the outcome. It's doing your best without needing constant validation. It's staying passionate without losing peace. That's the balance that keeps disciplined people grounded. They care, but they're not consumed. Emotional detachment also protects your energy. Not every battle deserves your reaction. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every emotion deserves a response. When you react to everything, you drain yourself. When you respond only to what matters, you multiply your power. Focus isn't just about attention, it's about emotional control. If you can't master your emotions, you'll waste energy fighting things that don't deserve your time. Here's something to practice. Pause before reacting. Before you respond to anything, a comment, a feeling, a setback, take one deep breath. That single pause separates impulsive reactions from intentional responses. Observe without absorbing. Notice your emotions like a scientist, not a sponge. Feel them fully, but don't let them dictate your behavior. Ask better questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "What is this teaching me?" Detachment turns chaos into clarity. Detach from outcomes. Focus on effort, not result. Because you can control actions, never outcomes. Choose calm as power. Calm isn't weakness. It's command. The calm mind sees clearly, and clarity always wins. When you detach emotionally, you become dangerous, in the best way, because nothing can manipulate you anymore. Not fear, not failure, not people's opinions. You become steady, anchored in purpose, guided by logic and protected by peace. You stop chasing mood swings and start mastering moments. That's the level where real discipline lives. The emotionally detached person still feels everything, but acts on principle, not impulse. They still care. They still love. They still dream. But they've learned that emotions are companions, not captains. And that's how they stay consistent in chaos. That's how they keep showing up when others disappear. Here's something beautiful about emotional detachment. It brings you peace in motion. You'll still work hard. You'll still chase goals, but you'll do it from a place of calm instead of chaos. No more emotional roller coasters. No more overreactions. Just quiet focus. That's what strength looks like when it matures. Not fire, but control. Remember this. Emotional detachment is the discipline of the heart. It's learning to feel deeply, but live wisely. It's giving your best without letting emotions dictate your worth. It's showing up every day because your word matters more than your mood. That's how professionals think. That's how winners operate. They don't chase motivation. They build emotional stability, and that stability fuels everything else. So the next time your feelings start screaming at you, to quit, to delay, to react, pause. Take a breath. Remember your values. Then act in alignment, not emotion. Because discipline isn't about force. It's about focus. And emotional detachment is what keeps that focus unshakable. Chapter 9. Discipline as Self-Love. Most people think self-love means softness, bubble baths, breaks, and gentle affirmations. But real self-love is not always comfortable. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's ruthless. Sometimes it's the quiet act of doing what's necessary even when it's not easy, because real self-love isn't about escaping discomfort. It's about becoming someone who can handle it, and that's where discipline comes. Indiscipline is self-love. It's saying, I care about my future enough to do what's hard today. It's refusing to settle for temporary pleasure at the cost of long-term peace. It's protecting your potential from your own laziness, distractions, and excuses. When you choose discipline, you're not being harsh on yourself. You're being honest with yourself. You're saying, I deserve more than the life that comfort is offering me. Here's something to remember. Self-love without discipline is just self-sabotage dressed in kindness. You can't heal by indulging every emotion. You heal by honoring your commitments, by doing what strengthens your soul, not what soothes your weakness. Rest matters. Yes, but rest is meant to recharge you for purpose, not to rescue you from effort. True love for yourself means wanting the best version of you to exist and being willing to build it. Most people think discipline is punishment. They see it as restriction, a loss of freedom, a lack of spontaneity. But discipline is the opposite. It's protection. It's the boundary that keeps you safe from chaos. When you're disciplined, you're not enslaved. You're in control. You don't rely on moods. You don't wait for motivation. You don't depend on luck. You rely on your standards. That's love. The kind that doesn't just comfort you, but cultivates you. Self-love says, I will give myself rest when I need it. Discipline says, I will not rest just because I'm bored. Self-love says, I forgive myself when I fail. Discipline says, I'll still show up tomorrow. Together, they build something powerful, a balanced life where compassion meets consistency. That's when your growth becomes sustainable. When you can be gentle with your heart, but firm with your habits. Here's something people rarely admit. You can't truly love yourself if you keep breaking promises to yourself. Love and trust are inseparable. If you keep lying to yourself, I'll start tomorrow, I'll change later, I'll do better when I feel ready, you lose trust in your own word. And without trust, there can be no love. That's why self-respect comes from discipline, not indulgence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you rebuild your trust. And with trust comes confidence. And with confidence comes peace. Discipline is the love language of growth. It's how you say to yourself, I'm worth the effort. It's how you prove to your future self that they can depend on you, because every disciplined act today is a gift to the version of you tomorrow. The body you're building, the skill you're mastering, the peace you're creating. They all start with love expressed as effort. Here's a truth most people overlook. Self-love without accountability turns into avoidance. And avoidance is how people slowly destroy themselves. Not through big mistakes, but through small, consistent neglect. You don't lose your potential in one moment. You lose it over years of excuses that sound reasonable. That's why real love requires boundaries. When you love yourself, you stop negotiating your standards. You stop excusing your own weakness. You stop calling avoidance rest and inconsistency self-care. You start telling yourself the truth, even when it hurts. Here's something powerful. Discipline is not about depriving yourself. It's about directing yourself. It's guiding your time, energy, and focus toward things that make you stronger, not smaller. It's saying no to distractions so you can say yes to destiny. It's not control out of fear. It's structure born out of love. Because when you truly love yourself, you stop giving your time to what drains you. You stop chasing validation that means nothing. You stop wasting your potential on things that don't build you. You protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Here's a question to ask yourself. If I loved myself deeply, what would I stop tolerating? What habits would I break? What excuses would I stop making? What boundaries would I start enforcing? The answers will show you where your love has become neglect. And every change you make from that awareness is an act of love in motion. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up for yourself not because you're forced to, but because you're worthy of effort. Every time you follow through, you send yourself a message. I matter. My goals matter. My peace matters. That's love. Not the soft kind that comforts you in your weakness, but the strong kind that guides you to strength. Here's a story. A man named Aaron struggled with weight and confidence for years. He'd try new diets, lose motivation, then give up. One day, He stood in front of the mirror and whispered to himself, "I deserve better than this version of me." He didn't mean it with hate. He meant it with love. He started small, walking daily, cooking healthier meals. Some days he failed, but instead of quitting, he reminded himself, "Discipline is how I show love to myself." Months passed, the weight dropped, but more importantly, the shame did too. Because he realized the journey wasn't about looking better, it was about treating himself better. That's the quiet power of discipline. It doesn't just change your results, it changes your relationship with yourself. Here's something I want you to remember. Self-love doesn't always feel good in the moment. Sometimes it feels like sacrifice. Sometimes it feels like solitude. Sometimes it feels like doing the right thing when no one is watching, especially when your feelings disagree. But that's the love that lasts. That's the love that builds character. Anyone can pamper themselves. Few can parent themselves, and parenting yourself, holding yourself accountable with compassion, is where true growth begins. Here's a mantra worth keeping close. Discipline is the highest form of self-respect. Because every time you choose consistency over excuses, you remind yourself that your life is worth effort. You stop settling for good enough. You stop treating your dreams like optional hobbies. You start showing up like someone who believes they matter. That's not pressure. That's purpose. So tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, what act of discipline today was actually an act of love? Maybe it was saying no to distraction. Maybe it was showing up when you were tired. Maybe it was being honest with yourself instead of comfortable. Whatever it was, that's love. The kind that strengthens, not softens. The kind that builds peace, not guilt. Discipline is not the enemy of self-love. It's the proof of it. Because you don't set high standards for the things you hate. You set them for the things you want to protect. And your life, your potential, your peace, they're worth protecting. So keep going. Keep showing up. Keep doing the hard things. Not because you have to, but because you love yourself too much not to. That's what real love looks like. Not comfort, but commitment. Not ease, but evolution. And that's how you build a life you'll never need to escape from. Chapter 10. The Final Push, Becoming Unstoppable. Every journey reaches a point where you're no longer fueled by excitement, only by endurance. The novelty fades, the motivation runs dry, and all that's left is you, your habits, and the question, how bad do I want this? That's the moment discipline reveals its true purpose. To carry you when everything else disappears. Because anyone can start strong. Few can finish stronger. When you begin something new, you're driven by vision. You can see the results in your mind, the success, the pride, the transformation. But vision is only the spark. Discipline is the firewood. It's what keeps the flame alive long after excitement burns out. That's where most people fall. Not because they lack ability, but because they stop too soon. They mistake exhaustion for the finish line. But the truth is, most breakthroughs happen right after you want to quit. That's why the final push matters. The final push isn't about intensity. It's about endurance. It's the quiet resilience that refuses to stop when progress slows. It's the moment when results stop being visible, but you keep showing up anyway. Because you trust that. Consistency compounds even when no one sees it yet. That's where mastery is. Built. Let's be honest, the final stretch of any goal feels lonely. You've lost the initial momentum. The crowd's gone quiet and the path feels longer than ever. But that's exactly where discipline graduates into identity. You're no longer doing it to prove something. You're doing it because it's who you are now. You've gone from trying to be disciplined to becoming the kind of person who doesn't quit. That shift is everything. Here's something powerful to understand. Discipline doesn't make things easier. It makes you stronger. When you reach the final push, you don't suddenly find more energy. You find more resolve. You stop saying, I can't. You start saying, I must. You stop asking, how long will this take? You start asking, how far can I go? That's how you cross the invisible line between discipline and destiny. The final push tests you differently. It doesn't test your skills. It tests your spirit. Can you stay consistent when no one's watching? Can you keep showing up when results stall? Can you trust the process when the reward feels far away? Because that's when most people disappear, right before the breakthrough. Not because they couldn't do it, but because they couldn't wait for it. They traded long-term fulfillment for short-term relief. But you're different. You've come too far to stop now. Here's the truth. You don't become unstoppable because life gets easier. You become unstoppable because you stop surrendering. You stop expecting the path to be smooth. You stop needing things to go your way. You stop waiting to feel ready instead. You move with acceptance, accepting the pain, the repetition, the silence. That's where your strength hardens into certainty, because when nothing can discourage you, nothing can defeat you. Here's a story. A sculptor once spent years chiseling a massive block of marble. Every day he worked for hours, but to others it looked like nothing was changing. One day a friend asked, "Why keep hitting it? Nothing's happening." The sculptor smiled and said, "Every strike weakens the stone, even if you can't see it." Months later, with one final hit, the marble cracked perfectly, revealing a masterpiece. It wasn't that last hit that did it. It was every swing before it. That's how discipline works. It's invisible progress followed by visible results. The final push isn't when you start breaking through. It's when everything you've built finally pays off. Momentum brought you here. Consistency sustained you. Now endurance will finish it. Because discipline isn't about how fast you go, it's about how long you last. And when you make it through the final push, you'll realize something profound. The goal was never just the achievement. It was the transformation. The person you became while chasing it is the real reward. Here's something to reflect on.
There will always be another mountain.
Another goal. Another test. But once you've proven you can finish what you start, every new mountain feels smaller, not because it is, but because you've grown. The first time you built discipline, you were fighting against yourself. Now you're working with yourself. You've built an identity that doesn't rely on external motivation. You've learned how to move forward even in silence. You've learned that you can depend on you. That's what it means to be unstoppable. Unstoppable doesn't mean you never rest. It means you never retreat. It means you rest to recover, not to run away. It means you slow down strategically, not emotionally. You may stumble, you may pause, but you never turn back. You may bend under pressure, but you never break under it, because now, discipline isn't something you practice. It's something you embody. Here's something important. When you reach the final push, your biggest enemy won't be exhaustion. It'll be self-doubt, that quiet voice that says, "You've done enough. You don't have to keep going. It doesn't matter anymore." But that voice is fear in disguise. It shows up when you're closest to growth, when the finish line is near, but not visible. That's when you must talk back. You must remind yourself, "I didn't come this far to almost make it. I didn't sacrifice this much to stop short. I am not done. I am built for this." Because you are. The final push isn't glamorous. It's not loud or celebrated. It's quiet, heavy, and deeply personal. It's the part of the journey that no one sees. The late nights, the early mornings, the private battles between comfort and purpose. But that's where transformation happens. That's where ordinary people become extraordinary. Not because they had more talent, but because they refused to give in to fatigue. They decided that pain was part of the process, not the reason to stop. Here's something powerful to remember. Discipline doesn't guarantee success. It guarantees progress. And progress, over time, becomes success. So even when the results seem small, even when no one's clapping, even when your pace slows, keep going. Because every day you move forward, you're separating yourself from who you used to be. And that distance, that gap between your past and your potential, is the measure of your growth. Here's your mindset for the final push. You're not tired, you're evolving. Growth feels like fatigue because you're outgrowing your limits. Keep going. The pain means you're building something. You've done it before, you can do it again. Look at your track record. Every hard thing you once thought impossible, you survived. This is just another one. Your emotions are temporary. Your mission is not. Don't let short-term feelings erase long-term goals. You're almost there, but not yet. The finish line demands the same focus as the start line. Treat the last mile with the same intensity as the first. The final push is the bridge between who you were and who you're about to become. It's where pain meets pride and exhaustion transforms into excellence. If you can make it through this part, not perfectly, but persistently, you'll carry that strength into everything else you do. Because once you've proven that you can finish one thing, you'll trust yourself to finish anything. Remember this: the goal was never to be perfect. It was to become relentless, to wake up every day, do what needs to be done, and keep your word, even when it's hard, even when no one notices, even when you don't feel like it. That's how you become unstoppable, not by force, but by faith. Faith in the process, faith in your consistency, faith in the person you're becoming. So as you reach the end of this chapter and the end of this journey, remember, this isn't the end at all. This is the beginning of a new standard, a new identity, a new rhythm for your life, because once you've built this kind of discipline, you can apply it anywhere. Every dream, every goal, every challenge, you now carry the mindset to face it, and that's what makes you unstoppable. Not because you never fall, but because you always rise. Not because you never doubt, but because you keep going anyway. Not because you're unbreakable, but because you've learned how to rebuild stronger. That's what discipline teaches you. That's what self-mastery looks like. That's what becoming unstoppable truly means. Take a deep breath. You've made it. Not just to the end of this audiobook, but to the beginning of a new version of yourself. Because everything you've learned here was never meant to end with these words. It was meant to live inside you, to guide you when it's quiet, to push you when it's hard, to remind you that discipline is not something you force. It's something you become. If you've listened this far, you already know that discipline isn't built in a single moment. It's built in 1,000 small ones, the ones no one sees, the early mornings, the lonely nights, the little promises you keep when your mind tries to talk you out of it. Those moments are your foundation now. That's where your confidence is born. That's where your peace begins. You've learned that discipline is not punishment. It's protection. It's how you love yourself enough to create the life you truly want. You've learned that emotions aren't commands. They're signals. That you can feel fear and still move. That you can feel tired and still show up. That you can feel doubt and still do the work. You've learned that consistency isn't glamorous, but it's sacred. Because every small act of effort is proof that you respect your own word. And self-respect is the quiet power that changes everything. Maybe you're still in the middle of your journey. Maybe the results haven't shown yet. Maybe you're still struggling to believe that all this effort will be worth it. Let this be your reminder. It always is. Because even when progress feels invisible, you're still growing. You're still rewiring your mind, reshaping your habits, rebuilding your identity. Every moment of discipline is sculpting the version of you that you promised yourself you'd become. Don't chase perfection. Chase presence. Show up every day in whatever way you can. Some days you'll run. Some days you'll crawl. But every step counts. Discipline is not about speed. It's about direction. As long as you keep moving forward, you're winning. And when you fall, because you will, get back up. Not with shame, but with strength, because failure doesn't define you. Recovery does. Here's the truth. You'll never feel ready for the life you want. You'll never feel completely confident, completely prepared, completely fearless. But that's okay. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to start. And once you start, momentum will take care of the rest. Action creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. And confidence creates consistency. That's the formula for every transformation. Remember this: discipline isn't something you do, it's something you live. It's in the way you wake up when it's easier to stay in bed. It's in the way you choose truth over comfort. It's in the way you keep going when the world forgets to clap. That's who you are now, the kind of person who follows through. And once you become that person, nothing can stop you. This isn't the end. This is your reset point. The moment you draw a line between who you were and who you choose to be. Because discipline gives you that power, the power to choose differently, to live intentionally, to create a life built on purpose, not on impulse. And from this moment on, every action you take is a declaration. I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not negotiating anymore. I'm not sabotaging myself anymore. I'm showing up. And when the world asks, "Why are you so focused? Why do you work so hard? Why don't you take it easy?" You'll smile and say, "Because I finally understand, discipline is how I love myself." So go forward now, quietly, confidently, relentlessly. Keep your word, keep your rhythm, keep your fire, even when no one's watching, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's the moment you become unstoppable, not through force, but through faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your discipline, faith in the person you're becoming. And remember, discipline will not take away your humanity. It will reveal it. It will show you how strong you can be, how patient, how capable, how consistent. And one day, when you look back, you'll realize that everything you were chasing wasn't about achievement. It was about alignment. You were just trying to meet the version of you who already knew how powerful you could be. Now you've met them, and they're waiting for you to keep going. This is Bookwise Audio. Thank you for listening. And remember, discipline is not a cage. It's the key.